Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fishing for Men. This is Brandon here, and we are wrapping up our look at what is recovery. We've been in this for, this is our fourth week now, and we're going to finish it off by taking a look at steps 10, 11, and 12 of the 12-step process of recovery. But before that, let me introduce who is in the studio with me today.
George, glad to be back.
Hey, y'all, it's Billy.
Yep. Billy's our anchor for this this series. So like I mentioned earlier, we've been taking a look at what is Bible-based recovery. What does it look like? And we've been using kind of AA and a Christian-based 12-step recovery program called Regeneration as kind of a base for what we've been looking at. I think each episode I've started off using my airplane analogy with like an airplane taking off on a runway, and if that had a bunch of potholes and things on it that prevented the airplane from really making it down the runway and taking off, you can imagine how that would cause problems. And so we linked those potholes and whatnot to our struggles and sin in our life, and how that can hold us back from really pursuing the life that God calls us to. So today, like I mentioned, we're going to be doing the last three steps 10, 11, and 12. So instead of doing our review of the previous steps like we've done, we're just going to dive straight into step 10, because that's actually what step 10 is all about. It's about putting steps 1 through 9 into practice in our daily lives. So step 10 is continue. It's about self-awareness and self-examination of what's going on inside of us. For example, what's going on in our hearts. How is that playing out in our actions? And how is that affecting our relationship with others? So I wanted to kind of kick us off with a couple verses from Psalms. So Psalms 139, 23 through 24, which says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." So tying that back into what we've been looking at so far, I think that's a pretty good succinct summary of what steps 1 through 9 are. So just a quick review of what all those are. Steps 1, 2, and 3, which was really us looking at where we're at in our life. It was admit, trust, and believe. So are we realizing our need for God and His grace in our lives? Those kind of work together to help protect us from maybe the pride that we have, or just the unwillingness to face what's going on in our lives. So we looked at that, admitted our need, examined our relationship with God, and made the decision to say, I'm not going to just trust you, God, with my salvation. I'm going to trust you to be the Lord of my everyday life, not just eternity. Then in steps 4, 5, and 6, which were inventory, confess, and repent, we're looking at receiving God's grace. So these steps helped us. We kind of turned inward a little bit, if you will, to do the hard work of looking at what the picture of sin really looked like in our life. And then we started the healing process by doing the counterintuitive thing of taking all of that mess and the things that we've ignored or, suffered a lot of pain from in our lives and sharing it with God and someone else. And then step 6, repent, was where we made a choice to turn away from that sin and back to God and put some guardrails in our life, just some practical things to help us to get back on track. So I wanted to go through each of the 9 steps with you guys really briefly and look at like what it looks like to do those on a daily basis. Because up until this point, if you think about the program, it hasn't been on a daily basis thing. And maybe this is a good point to pause really quick, because we've been breezing through this in like an hour or so over a couple of weeks. But if you were actually going through one of these programs in real life, it doesn't go that quickly. So maybe from start until the end of step 9, so where we're at right now, you'd be looking at probably a good 9-10 months. Mm-hmm. So a good chunk of a year. So we've spent a lot of in-depth time looking at each one of these steps, thinking about them, looking at them from a bunch of different angles. And now we're going to say, okay, we're going to take all that and learn how to condense it down into doing all those like every day. So what does that look like? Which I think kind of makes sense, because if you think about I don't know, think about a profession that you have to go to school for a long time. Think about like a medical doctor. That would be something that you spend years and years and years and years of learning to do that. And then all that stuff you learned over those years, you're walking it out every day. So I think it's kind of like that. Or another good example I like is a pilot. Same thing, right? So I want to take a look at those steps really quickly. So step one, admit. Some questions you might look at to evaluate that in your life is there anything that I'm trying to manage apart from God? That could be resentments, that could be anger, that could be another person. Then step two, believe. Do you have doubts about who God is? Are you struggling to believe in his goodness? Step three, trust. Have you stuck with that commitment to trust God? Or if you're like me, do you find yourself constantly like trying to grab that trust back? How about you guys with the trust piece?
Yes. Every day.
Yeah, it's quite difficult because I want to do it my way sometimes, and
Sometimes?
a lot of the time.
Yeah, I to be honest, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I have to constantly work on is not trying to grab back control and trusting God. But moving on, because we got 6 more steps. So step 4, inventory. What is competing with God for my heart? What are the things that I constantly am trying to replace God with in my life? Step 5, confess. When those things do come up, when I have sinned and I realized it, am I just brushing it aside and saying, that's not that big of a deal? Or am I taking that moment to like text one of the guys and be like, hey, George, you got a second to talk? And getting that out there before it has time to kind of like set in and take root. Step 6, repent. So if it's one of the sins or struggles that you recognize while you were going through all the steps in detail and you came up with the repentance plan and you see it, you're like, I'm getting angry again. This is usually why that happens. I'm going to confess that. And then this is what I do to help me turn away from that anger. Like, are you walking that out? Step 7, follow. How's our relationship with God? Are we turning back to him? Are we relying on him as a source to help us to make it through these steps? Step 8, forgive. I think we all know what that feels like when we have bitterness or resentment or anger towards someone, right? Are we stopping in that moment and saying, you know what? I forgive that person. We talked, I think it was last episode, to say that forgiving doesn't mean that, like, if someone's legitimately done something wrong to you, like, think about, if I'm making up something random, but if someone burned down your house, it doesn't mean, that you're like, no, it's good. You know what I mean? Like, you would have some boundaries put in place and say, I need to be careful around this person, but still making that decision to forgive. And then step 9, amends. When we've done something wrong to someone else, do we quickly go to them to apologize and ask for forgiveness? So kind of like the same thing with recognizing when we've sinned and confessing, or recognizing that that's hurt there, and forgiving someone. When we said something harsh to our wife that past morning, are we saying, okay, I need to go take care of that, right? And going back right away and apologizing. That's pretty easy, right? Just as you're going throughout the day, just be like, okay, this is step 5. Okay, let's do it. No?
I wonder if, I'm just thinking of the listeners out there who are like, maybe they're in their early walk with Christ right now. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if for them, it may be critical to, especially, I think I just can't keep to, my mind is just stuck on step 1, 2, and 3, admitting, believing, and trusting. Mm-hmm. As a new believer, to wake up every morning and start off by just saying those out loud, that you admit that you're powerless against your sin, that you believe God can heal you and have recovery in your life, and then 3, trusting him with that.
Yeah. No, that's really, that I like that. And I like doing that at the beginning of the day because it kind of gets you in the right mind step. So all these steps, as we've been going through them, like for regeneration at least, they have like the step listed, and then they have a scripture that goes with it. And we've peppered those in here throughout this, but we'll put the link to that in the show notes so that you guys can go check that out, because that is really super helpful. And those are such foundational things that I think they're almost subconscious in a way. Like they're not something you're actively thinking about. So kind of starting your day off intentionally, I really like that.
Yeah.
Some good practical advice from George.
I say that only because I struggle with, especially step 3, like you talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And there's one side where there's a level of like, I should know better. Like I should know that I should be trusting God day in and day out, minute by minute, case by case basis. And simultaneously there's this where I'm not. I'm having to regularly evaluate and go, I'm not trusting God with this.
Yeah. But I think the cool thing in that is that you recognize that. Because I bet, let's say Georgia 5 years ago, would that have even been a thought that crossed your mind?
No way.
Right? And you touch on a really good point. And I think this goes for any issue that anyone struggles with. We often think of relapse, if you want to call it that, for like anger. I mean, it's certainly applicable to, substance abuse and things like that. But I think a lot of times when we hit that quote unquote relapse, we feel like we've gone back to square one. But I really like this image of, imagine you're climbing a mountain, and along the way, it's not always going to be a straight up and to the right climb. There may be little dips and stuff. And when you're in those dips, it can feel like you're back down at the foot of the mountain. But if you take a look back, you see that you're still pretty high up, way further up than when you started. And so it's good to recognize that when you feel like you're failing. I think to take just a moment to pause and give yourself credit for, one, the work you put in, but also to thank God for all the work he's done in your life to help you get you there, because you aren't typically in that same spot. I think that's just a part of that healing process. You don't do all this stuff once and be like, no problems, I'm good, right?
I'm clean.
So how about you, Billy? How do you think this would look like to walk out all 9 steps just kind of on a daily basis? Like they just become a thought, or part of like how you think about and approach life.
Part of it, I think, is baked in, like you said, but I think you can also fall into the trap of taking some of those for granted, because they are sort of, as you mature in your walk, they become sort of just innate to the way you operate. And so for me, big sticky note person. So if you go in my office, there's sticky notes everywhere of things that I want to remember.
Okay.
So like for me, I would have all 12 of these like sitting on a sticky note. No, just one sticky note.
Oh, just one.
Just one.
Oh.
I don't need 12.
Okay. You got really small handwriting.
No, you get big sticky notes. The rectangle ones.
Okay.
I also have those and the little ones. So I have sticky notes everywhere. But for me, that would help me with my just reminding that, not necessarily that I have to go through them necessarily in order all the time, but as a reflection of like, hey, it's a tool. It's now a tool in the tool belt for anything that happens, whether it's a hard situation in life, whether it's you've realized you need to confess something. Maybe it's, hey, I realize I've drifted from God. Like I actually have a process that I can work through. That I can reference back to, and I'm not like, oh crap, what do I do with this?
No, exactly. And I like the check engine light analogy. I probably used that on here before, but it's like when you see that, you start trying to like figure out, okay, what's going on? Maybe I need to pull over. And so you can kind of do that same thing. Like you said, it's like a set of tools you now have. And you may start off at the, I said something mean to my wife. I need to go apologize to her. And so you start off at step 9 in amends, but you probably will want to trace back from there and say like, why did I do that? Like what happened? And kind of, do your inventory, if you will, and work through the whole process. But yeah.
Or even all the way back to, was I not trusting God in that situation and I decided to act out of my own reaction versus doing that?
I would say 100% of the time that's a yes.
But I think that's the whole part is like, you can like, you don't have to be like, okay, now I did something bad. Let me go start in step one and
Admit, I need help. I'm bad.
go through each one until I like, okay, I'm clean again.
Get to the end.
That's not normal.
Because you really could. You could,
Yeah.
just as the whole sacrificial system was, you could turn it into a checkbox of,
Yes.
all right, each week I'm going to do the 12 steps. Look at Sunday and go through the whole week, and I'll go through my 12 steps, and then I'm clean for the next week, and then I'll do it again, and then like you could totally turn it into just that.
This week's Leviticus reference brought to you by Billy.
It's the new book we're going through, everybody.
And by we, he means himself.
Yeah. It's super fascinating, actually.
Okay. We'll let you talk about it in depth another time. So we got this set of tools. What do you do if, like, despite having them, you still keep on doing the same thing? Like, what if you got this person?
I don't think it's an if. I think it's a when.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. So what do you do? What do you do when that happens? It could be related
Start at
to a
step
person.
1 and go through all 12.
And you do, and then 10 minutes later you did
Do
it
it
again.
I think then it's time to start really even doing a deeper examination, honestly.
What does deeper examination look
I
like?
think that's, am I doing this as a checkbox
Mm-hmm.
just to get through it, to say I did it and now I'm good?
Mm-hmm.
But are you truly examining why you did it? Do you have boundaries? And like, it's basically taking each of the steps, in my opinion, and maybe expanding on them a little bit. So repentance plan. Did I actually follow that?
Yeah.
Do I need additional boundaries? Do I need to cut something out completely? Like, do I need to take now that more extreme step that I haven't taken because clearly what I'm doing isn't working, because doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same result is,
I've heard it's insanity.
yeah.
Oh, I thought that's how we lived life.
Just kidding. Feels that way sometimes. But if we're doing the same thing over and over, expecting a result, but it's the same outcome,
Yeah.
we got to change something.
Yeah. No, I like that, starting kind of close to home and seeing like, hey, is what I'm doing genuine? I think another key thing to keep in mind is that this whole recovery process is awesome in of itself, and by itself can do a lot of good. But I think it's good to consider as one piece to our discipleship to Christ, to living a healthy life. So, I think if you did all 12 steps, well, we're talking about 1 through 9 right now, on your own, and didn't have community or people holding you accountable,
Yep.
there'd be a lot of like pitfalls in this. So
Right.
if you are struggling with something, take it to the people that you trust. Ask for prayer. Let them ask questions of you that they can maybe help give you a different perspective.
Yeah.
And there are some things sometimes in life that are, for whatever reason, can be really, really tough for us to work our way through on our own. Sometimes we need specialized help. That could involve going, and seeking counseling on a particular issue, like especially one that keeps on coming up stubbornly. So, there's a lot of resources out there, and it's good to ask for help. And hopefully through this, you gotten a little bit of practice at that you, be a little bit more willing to consider that.
Yeah.
So,
Because I guess the thing to call out, like any of these programs, this AA, any 12-step program is not a silver bullet. to
no,
fix you.
absolutely not.
The only being that can fix you is God.
Yep.
And he also doesn't promise that he will fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
Paul had that thorn in his side his whole life. Whatever that thorn might have been, we don't know. But some of that stuff you may struggle with for your life. And then it's how do you, help manage is the word that I think about. But like,
Still learn to trust God even in that.
even despite struggling with that, which isn't a fun message to hear either, but
No, not at
it
all.
is reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
No, this is good conversation to kind of help segue us into step 11, which is intimacy. So we've been talking about steps 1 through 9 and getting our daily reps in and getting good at that. We kind of talked about the limitations of that. But one of the dangers in that when things are going well is that we lose sight of what we kind of committed to in the first 3 steps. So once we get comfortable, things are going good. Hey, I've got this. What's the first thing we start to stop doing?
Checking in.
I think we start to believe we got things, we got it under control ourselves. We forget that it was God that helped get us to that point. As soon as we're comfortable, we're like, hey, I'm good. I'm pretty good at this. So step 11, which is intimacy, is really important here towards the end to remind us that, as Billy said just a minute ago, all of this healing, the only way that it's possible, it's not because I have awesome leaders or other people that I go through this program with, or even if I get counseling or all the different things I could do. True change only happens through Christ. Mm-hmm. And so having that as kind of our center and being grounded in that is so, so important. Not just as a part of a recovery program, but just in general, but especially with these steps to really see that change continue in yourself, it has to be from Christ. Like we have to have that perspective.
If I just prayed the sinner's prayer, though, doesn't that mean I have a relationship with Christ?
Yes, in a sense.
So
Right.
what does intimacy then look like?
That's my question to you. You can't steal it. Yeah. Because, I mean, I think if we're all honest, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear intimacy?
Sex.
Exactly right.
Pow, chicka, wow, wow.
Thank you for that, Billy. Yeah,
Everyone's soundboard.
Yeah.
exactly. We tend to think of it as sex. And oftentimes we use intimacy as a polite way of saying sex in church circles. So what does intimacy with God mean then?
Being honest with him.
Yeah.
Letting him, even though he knows, I think it's a two-way street in
Right.
taking the good, the bad, the ugly to him, and then allowing him to lead you in the way that may not always be fun, but the way that he's asking you to then go after that.
Yeah. I think those are components of kind of a bigger idea of just like closeness, openness, being fully known. And even tying it back to, us saying, hey, we typically tie intimacy with sex. I think there's some, even in this context, there's some aspects of that, because I think one of the blessings in sex is that God gives us kind of a glimpse of what an intimate relationship looks like here on earth. I know that's weird to think about with God, but that closeness and being one, like we get glimpses of that in, a relationship between a husband and wife.
Well, the whole metaphor throughout the Bible with Jesus is a bride and a groom.
Yeah.
It's a giant marriage.
Yep. Exactly.
So it is interesting. Like, and we always think about that, like, oh yeah, that's in sort of like the New Testament with Jesus. Well, hey, no, actually, it starts back in Genesis.
There we go.
So it is. I mean, it is God's way, I think, for us of reaching down to meet us where we're at to understand what intimacy looks like in this physical aspect. But there's so much more
Yeah.
that's happening.
In looking at intimacy, we kind of touched about why step 11 is so important. One, to keep us grounded so that we don't get off thinking that, all this healing that we've experienced is because of ourselves. And as we were working through the steps, I think back to step 4 with inventory. And what was it that we were looking at in step 4? What were we kind of digging for in that?
Patterns,
Patterns, yeah. And what did those patterns represent?
idols.
Idols. And what are we trying to get from those idols?
What are we trying to get from them?
Yeah. What do they do for us? Why do we chase after them?
Because we feel like they're going to fill a hole that only God can.
Fulfillment.
Yeah, fulfillment. And I think even with like the 9 steps, we feel we feel some relief from some not so great feelings, be it shame, anger, lust, whatever it may be. And that feels good, right? And that in itself can become an idol, right? So we just talked about, we listed some things that don't satisfy. I think one thing that we could all say we've had struggles with would be lust or sex, right? Like, even though it can be good in certain contexts, we can try to use that to feel good.
And the world will tell you that's okay.
Yes. But at the end of the day, after you get what you want, how do you feel?
Not great.
Well, maybe
Not
for a little
fulfilled.
bit, but yeah, it doesn't last, right? You have to keep on having more and more. I think other common things we talk about is money. Like, well, if I just had this much more, if I could just buy that, then I would be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's a promotion or having power over people, or, I love to travel and I'm always like, get so excited about a trip, and they're great and I have great memories from them, but do they sustain me over the months and years after that? No. Right? So like, only God can. And we constantly are forgetting about God and trying to turn to other things, those idols that we're chasing after. So that's another reason why, not just so that we remember who's bringing healing about in our life, but the whole goal of this is to recognize that we need God, and that only He can not only heal us, but help us to feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
Can't talk tonight. And that reminded me of a verse of a story in, was it John, I think, where Jesus is at a well. I'm just going to read it really quick. It's John 4:10-13. It says, Jesus replied, "If you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are seeking, you would have asked me and I would give you living water." So this is Jesus at the well with the Samaritan lady, and he's telling her to get, that he can provide her with water, and they're having a conversation. And it continues on with the Samaritan lady saying, "But sir, you don't have a rope or a bucket, and this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed?" Jesus replied, "Anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life." I've heard this story a lot growing up in church. I've heard it many times, and it's like, yeah, I get it. But then when I drop back into my actual struggles of life and think about how I try to do things in my own power and put it in the context of like walking out as a disciple of Christ and being like, all those things I'm chasing, all those things that I worry about, that I try to take care of on my own, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus tells us right here, only He can. How about for you guys?
I think that I've been in this boat where I'm like reflecting this exact thing, where I know that day by day I'm looking for fulfillment and sustenance outside of God on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And my instinct isn't to go to Him. And simultaneously, I'm disappointed because I want freedom from said things. Let's say it's lust. Let's say it's approval of others.
Yeah.
Or security. That's a big one lately. And so I have this expectation of Him, and simultaneously, I'm keeping stuff from Him.
Yeah.
I'm withholding back things that I should be surrendering to Him on a day-to-day. And I love this story. I think it's might be one of my favorite stories in the Bible.
Oh, yeah?
The Samaritan
Why is that?
I think I see myself in her.
Okay.
I think there's a part of me when I look back into my life where I've been there. I've been there where I've had this mounds of experience in life, in sex, relationships, money, success, approval of others, being a well-liked individual. I always felt like I was very blessed in a lot of areas of my life, but I was never happy. It was never enough. I always sought out more. And when I finally learned about who Jesus was and what He did for me, I said, wow, who could this be that loves me so much, and why? When I look back and see, I don't know. I just relate to her a lot in a lot of ways.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
How about you, Billy?
Yeah, I as much of that I relate to George. As I've been going through this, so I'm in the middle of this, everybody, and there's been just this understanding that I've allowed sin to have more power than God's grace.
Like if you were to put it on a balancing scale?
Yeah. Yeah. I've allowed that to still outweigh all that Jesus did on the cross for me, rather than allowing grace to completely stomp through all the sin in my life. And even to the point of, even something that I even wrote down in my inventory was the fact that I set an expectation that I have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I do fail, sin now holds this grip on me, and I go through all kinds of things like I hurt my witness, I have lost any chance to talk to them about Jesus, they're going to think X of me now. So I've allowed that to happen rather than be like, you know what? Yep. Hey, look, hey God, I messed up. Give me another chance to go have a relationship with this person and allow the grace to supersede the power of sin.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, I also think I haven't fully allowed myself to receive all that God really truly has for me. And so I've got to let go of that grip and let the past be the past. And so that I can actually let God do what he needs to do for me in the future.
What do you think that would look like for you?
A lot less time spent in my mind thinking about those things.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I think it would make me more present at home with the kids, with the family. There's often times where I catch myself where I'm there, but like I'm thinking about something completely different. I'm like how do I even? I'm here at dinner, but there's something else going on in my head.
Else,
yeah. And so it would be, I think about like what it would mean to like just be free of that, like that, have that joy of like, you know what, that stuff did happen.
Yeah.
But it's time to let that go. Obviously through the proper steps and doing everything that we need to make it right, but like just to let go of that and allow God to lead you forward rather than the enemy to lead you back, which is often the way that I go.
Same here.
A ditto from George. No, I like that. I think...
Because like I think about this girl at the well, what an awesome experience she just had with Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows how long that walk back to the city was after that. What if the enemy grabs a hold of her and is like, yeah, but you're still not good enough. Think of all the husbands that you had, the mistakes that you made. And she's like, yeah, you know what? Peel off. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
But she didn't. She allowed grace to supersede us. She goes back into the city and say, look who I met.
Yeah. No, that's good.
But I don't always let that happen.
I was going to say, but that's... feels like it's a lot easier said than done.
It does.
Right? Definitely feels like it's a lot easier said than done. But I think this brings up an important point. One thing, that I've really been wanting to hopefully communicate to everyone listening through this whole series is we wanted to do this series in the first place because we thought it was that recovery. I think you could also call it discipleship is super important for everyone. And I know for me, before I went through the process, and today in talking to a lot of people, there's kind of like a preconceived notion. And I think it's from like hearing about Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's not to knock on it at all. But if I'm not an alcoholic, I'm like, oh, that's not for me. You know what I mean? But I think the stuff that we're talking about here right now is something that we all universally struggle with. Like I've never had a one-on-one conversation with someone who wasn't struggling with this very thing that we're talking about. It's that whole was it Romans 8? I can't remember, but where he's like, I don't do what I want to do, that whole back and forth battle type of thing. It's like, even though we know that in our head and we can talk about it like this, the truth is all three of us will probably walk away and still be dealing with it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's that kind of whole that Romans 12, the renewal of our mind. And we were talking about earlier, we're like, there's sometimes where there's dips and we feel like we're not getting it, but over time, it's this process, right? Which leads into all sorts of other fun topics like sanctification and justification and all that stuff that we won't dive into tonight. But without leaving the listeners going like, okay, what am I supposed to take away from that? What are some practical steps we can do to become more intimate with God in our day-to-day lives?
Spend time with him.
Yeah.
Whether that's just sitting, doing nothing, which sounds really strange. Whether that's spending 15 minutes with him in your Bible, whether that's
Could be singing
worship
Yep.
music in the car on the way to work, whether that's time in prayer, whether that's a gratitude journal or
Billy,
going on a walk.
can you share some with George? You're taking them all.
I'm gonna have nothing to talk about.
No. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Those are all really good.
I'll let George go now.
How kind of you. Be like, let's see if he's got anything.
Yeah. I wanted to give him a challenge, all right?
I'll take 12 out of the 13 possible things.
You got to figure out the 13th.
Well, I'll take the one that you kind of hinted at earlier. And I think it might be one of my favorites. And I think I take it for granted a lot. And we've talked about it a little bit. I hinted at it a second ago as well, I think. But I think it's coming to God honestly and transparently with the, hey, why does it feel like you're not here? Or where are you right now? And at the same time, take it on the other extreme, which I feel like I need to do better about. I feel like I'm unpacking it even today, going, I have this expectation of you that you're not fulfilling. I'm keeping things from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry for that, God. I love you. I want to see the growth. I want to see you stretch me. And I want to see myself overcome this or figure out how to go about my day to day without it consuming my thoughts, consuming my mind, and being able to come to him with both ends, simultaneously with worship, simultaneously with gratitude. I think there's a level of like emotional intimacy that you can achieve with him through that.
Okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, what does he get for that answer?
Drum roll, please.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
I didn't know I had to rate him. Didn't know our practical steps to spend time with God were on a rating scale.
Brandon's trying to pit us again.
I know. I think he is today. He's in a little spicy mood, everybody.
Okay. No, thank you for
I
sharing
should have
that. You
just plugged
guys.
the fifth.
So I think we've been focused on in talking about intimacy with God, with our relationship with God specifically, but I think out of that flows how we treat other people, right? So they're connected with each other. Unless you're a monk in a temple on a mountain somewhere, like you're gonna have interaction with people.
That does sound wonderful sometimes, though.
Yes.
At times, yes.
Yes.
I've always wanted an island in the South Pacific. No? Good. Anyone else?
When you buy one, just let us know.
You know, when I told my dad that, you know what he said to me? He's like, they're going to have hurricanes, right?
Oh, no.
At least he didn't go, not a chance.
Squash. Yeah.
He at least implied that you'd have it one day. You're just going to have hurricanes.
Uh,
That's how I took that answer.
okay. Not what I was looking for,
It's,
Dad.
it's in your future sometime, Brandon. Just prepare for the hurricanes.
It's my wild pigs. Yeah, coconut trees. Oh, yeah. It'll be good. Anyways. So, that's how we, work our focus on a relationship with God. But how can we also, out of that, have intimacy with other people? And I think there's a lot of way you could tackle this, but one of the angles that I was looking at it from is how can we serve others? Because I think a lot of times, if we're honest, we are looking at what we can get from other people, whether it's like an active kind of conscious type of thing, or we tend to be self-centered a lot of times. So how can we serve people? And yeah, that can be something physical, like, for instance, we got a guy in our Thursday morning Bible study right now who's gone through surgery. He's limited in what he can carry and stuff. So we have some guys over there helping to mow his lawn because he can't push his lawnmower. So that is a definite way to do that. But just some ideas to get us thinking about it. So what are we passionate about doing? Are there activities that we enjoy that we can use to serve others through? Do we have special abilities that we can use to serve others? Do we have possessions? Has God blessed us with different resources that we can use? And even, it doesn't have to be money or material things even. Maybe we have time because of the season of life we're in, I'm kind of in that spot. My kids are getting a little bit older and they don't require quite as much of my time. Or it could be our experiences, different things we've experienced in life that helps us to have a perspective that we can share with others. How about you guys? What gifts, kind of going off of those different categories, what are some things that you guys have that you can?
I enjoy spending time with students.
Students?
Yeah. So I've had my boys in 6th grade. They'll be freshmen this year, which is really awesome. It's also just an excuse to go act like a middle school and high school kid for a little bit every week, which is fun. Although sometimes I do have to get onto them, play dad mode that too. But it's fun. I enjoy going to hang out with them, especially given that I would say probably more than half of them come from broken homes, which stinks. Even in a place that we live in where we have a church that's great, and they've all been going to church, many of them for a long time, they still come from divorced families. And so just being able to be there for them, and I've had some really awesome conversations through that. But just hanging out with students has been one that's been a blast.
I love that. You took the one that I wanted to say.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm only two.
I'm noticing a pattern here.
He was my co-leader for camp, so.
Okay.
It was fun. Going back to the series that we did on purpose, and one of your favorite episodes, Brandon, was our purpose at work.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know.
Oh yeah, I don't think he was here for that one, was he?
I wasn't.
Yeah, conveniently.
He did.
He wasn't there for whenever I taught the message on it either.
I think both of those were work trips, believe it or not.
We'll see. There are two in communication. I've learned that there's two things that you can do when talking to someone to have a conversation stand out to them. You guys have brought this up before. We've talked about it in the Purpose series. And one of them is when you're asking someone how they're doing, asking them how they're doing, and then how are you really afterwards. And I like doing that at work because a lot of the times we're coming in and out of the elevators. I bump into someone and getting lunch and whatnot, and having them take that moment to stop and pursue a conversation. And then lastly, prayer, and not just stopping or not just saying, hey, I'm going to be praying for you, but actually stopping and praying for that person in that moment, or asking them, what can I be praying for you about?
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, right?
Yeah.
That you can do that. I'll throw in mine really quick before we move on. I think one thing is, and kind of along the line of yours, George, in that it's something simple, but I like to listen. So when I sit down with people and have a conversation, I don't talk a lot.
I beg to differ.
Okay, I can talk.
What are you doing right now?
Just giving a little payback for the spiciness.
Billy's been my unofficial counselor the past couple of weeks.
Me and Brandon get coffee every Monday morning at my house, and so that's why I give him a hard time, because I get to hear him talk all the time.
Yeah, because I've done a lot of listening throughout the week. Billy and my wife are they're the ones that have to listen to me. So listening, and then I just have a strong desire to draw people into community. So just following up, inviting people, and pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It doesn't take a lot of effort. I found the inviting and following up thing. I don't say this to think that I'm all great or better than other people, but because it wasn't something I did very good until a couple of years ago. But a lot of people don't do it. And so it's, I've learned like, hey, I think this is something I can do. So I just try to really be on the lookout for people that I can invite to join in on stuff. So that was step 11, intimacy. And we were looking at keeping us grounded in God through this whole process and relying on Him. And I want to usher us into the last step now, which is regenerate. So imagine you've been going through this program. You've spent almost an entire year slowly working your way through 12 steps, and you finally get to step 12. It's like, I'm almost done. I finally get to get out of here, right? It's been a lot of hard work, but it's not just kind of this goal where it's like you cross the finish line and you're done. As Billy said earlier.
What? Nobody told me that.
Nope, you signed up for life and you didn't know it.
Brandon didn't tell me this, everybody.
Well, hey, I said you were going to be a disciple.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of indicates like it's ongoing, right?
You tricked me.
It was a good trick. It was worth it.
I'll let this one go.
Okay. Awesome. So I don't know if you guys remember last episode, we talked about the peace process, biblical peace process. And it started with forgiving others. That's something that you do between you and God. The next step was amends, which is where you go to someone, you apologize and ask for forgiveness for the sins you've committed against them and ask how you can make it right. And that's where that ended. And I think a lot of us are like, but what about them? So that's where the last piece comes in, which is reconciliation, where there's the opportunity for them to essentially offer amends back to you, right? And that can look like a couple of different things. And the whole idea behind this and why it shows up here in the last step is we've been looking at writing our relationship with God and then writing our relationship with others. Because if you go back to Jesus's words when he's asked what the greatest commandment is, it's to love God. I'm going to totally butcher it, but basically love God and then love other people. And so that's baked into kind of all of this. So getting rid of the idols in our life, loving God, and then living out of that love towards others. So reconciliation. When we go to reconcile with someone, this is the one part of the peace process that we have no control over. I can make a decision to forgive. I can make a decision to go apologize and ask for forgiveness. If that person hasn't sinned against me and it was only one way from me to them, we're reconciled. There is no third piece. But if there's sin coming back the other way, which most of the time there probably is, I can't do anything to force them. It's up to them, right? And so this can be a tricky step. And I think one thing that's important to remember in it, it's not our job to fix the other person, just like it wasn't anybody else's job to fix us. That's Jesus's job. So all we can do is follow Jesus and be obedient to what he calls us to do. And so we got a couple of verses on that. John 13:34 through 35. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Pretty simple, right? Yeah. How are you guys doing on that?
Would you say the church looks like that today?
Mm-hmm. Is that a trick question?
No, Billy's stirring the pot. Are you getting ready to launch the next series?
I'm just being honest. It says
Yeah.
Everybody should know we are Christians by the way we love other people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel at that.
Yeah.
And that's not like just a specific thing at us. I think that's a big C church problem.
Yeah. Christians in general.
The church globally, do we look like we love other people?
I think the label Christians, I feel like that's been under scrutiny against the world and to the world for decades now. it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong. There's definitely a different word or a different definition for love in the Bible versus what
Right.
secular culture will say love is. But at the same time, I do think on a large scale, I think we've done a poor job of loving other people.
I agree. I think I've done a poor job.
Oh, gosh. That's what. Go look at our inventory.
Right. But I think, whether we ever can walk this out perfectly or not, which
We won't.
I would say no.
Yeah.
But I think that's another reason why this is so important.
But how many people take the time to actually do the self-reflective work to understand how they are loving people?
Well, that's why we're talking about it.
Exactly.
And one more verse, Romans 13:8. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. I think another version says, owe no one anything but to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. So it's just this simple concept of loving other people. And I think that has to be at the core of where we're coming from when we, seek reconciliation with others. I've shared on here a little bit about doing amends with my stepfather a couple years back. I was very fortunate. As soon as I offered my amends, he wanted to do the same back. So we were able to be reconciled in that moment. But I get that's not always going to be the case. We may go with a good heart and intention, and it could be met with a lot of anger or bitterness or a misunderstanding of what we're trying to do.
Or thanks.
Yeah. And just nothing. And you're like, this is awkward.
So how do you deal with that when that is like family that you do see regularly? It's not our job to fix them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that and not let the bitterness creep back in that they didn't do what you would like for them to do? Like that's gets sticky really fast.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Shoot, it could be even people in your own house.
Yeah, it could. Sometimes I feel it's that way with my kids.
For sure. So how do you walk through that?
Well, the simple answer is you go back and trust God and don't place those expectations on the other person. But that is so much easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Like if I think tied in with the difficulties of that is that there's hurt. We don't feel like we're being loved or affirmed or accepted, or there's not safety or security in the relationship, whatever that issue that's kind of driving those feelings may be. It's a huge challenge for us to honestly not to love someone outright, no strings attached, and not expect anything back from them. But like look at the example Jesus gave us, right? Look at what he did on the cross, despite what we're still doing today. And that's what we're called to do. And it's not easy for us. But God knew that. And that's why he sent his son. So in practical terms, on a daily basis, how do you do that? I think for me, I wrestle with God on it and ask him to help me to have peace with that person, to be able to love them despite.
Sure.
That may involve setting boundaries. It may involve limiting the amount of time I spend around a certain person, depending on what the circumstances are. I think there's wisdom in doing that sometimes, but overall, yeah, it's going back to myself and my relationship with God and digging in deep there.
Sure.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a level of evaluating that we can only control what's in our control.
Yep.
And if what we're holding on to is outside of our control, then exercising, surrendering it to God.
Yep.
And finding a way to love them, maybe with boundaries set in place.
Yeah.
So,
But all of that takes a pretty deep level of maturity, I think.
yes.
Not easily come by.
Especially when it's family, like Billy said.
Yeah.
Or your wife.
wife, kids, parents,
Yeah.
siblings,
All of them.
all the things.
Okay, so we're supposed to love other people. We had some pretty good verses there, but what about confrontation? Is there any time that it's good to
Avoid at all costs.
avoid at all costs? Okay, that's Billy's final word on this subject.
And we're done. Check us out next week.
Okay, later, guys. No.
Oh, I
Is
hate
there a time?
confrontation.
Is there a
so
time and
much.
place for it? Is there such a thing as healthy confrontation?
I think there is. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to go through life without confrontation. And so if you do choose the avoidance piece altogether, it's not going to be a healthy way. And I think that's where bitterness starts to really set its roots. Whenever you're like, you know what, I'm just going to avoid this, but I'm going to hold that against them, but I'm never going to tell them about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going to pretend like it never happened. But yeah, I do think there's healthy confrontation, especially between believers, because in that reality, both of you are held to the same expectation under God. And so there is a confrontation that I think is healthy, and we have to be open to that as believers, especially when we get in community and you allow somebody to speak into your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just good stuff.
Yeah.
That also means the not fun stuff.
Does that mean I can confront you, Billy?
Every Monday, 7:00.
And vice versa.
But that I do think there's healthy confrontation. But I also think there's a way in which you do it. That's not like, hey, you're terrible, stop doing this. It's, hey, man.
So shame and blame is that's not the tactic.
And taking blackmail.
Oh, hey, that's you're up in the ante a little bit there.
No, I think it looks more like, hey, man, like I've noticed this pattern that's happening, and it's having this impact. Let's have a conversation about this. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Not, hey, dude, you keep having 8-10 drinks every time we go out. Quit doing that because you're acting a fool.
A little tough.
You look like an idiot. Like, I don't think that's the way you go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we even kind of get a blueprint in the Bible of how to walk through confrontation. So Matthew 18:15-17, I'll kind of paraphrase it against really quick. First thing it says is go and do it privately. So you don't get them in a group and then have everyone confront them. You do it one-on-one. And then if they don't respond to that, they say to bring a couple of other people into it. And I think, in the context of talking about this is amongst Christians, it would be like if our group of FFM guys, we may bring in, if me and Billy are going at it, Billy comes and confronts me, he may bring George and Cody into the picture.
My bodyguards.
And then as a third layer, if that doesn't resolve the problem, then you take it to the church. And then Jesus says after that, if the person won't accept the church's decision, treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. Now, I don't know if that last sentence means like throw them out, or if it just means you're going to have to approach them differently, because even though they claim to be a Christian, you're not able to approach them like in the same way you should be able to, because they're just not willing to accept kind of this whole idea of being in a relationship founded on love. So what next? We looked at all 12 steps. We've looked at this last part of the peace process. We're doing good. We're founded in God. What do we go out and do with the change he's brought about in our life? Any ideas?
Run through the streets and say I'm clean.
Okay. I thought you were going to say naked, so I'm glad you didn't say that.
I'm forgiven.
I'm born again.
No, Brandon, we're not going to do that.
I was going to say, because I will not be joining you. How how about this idea? How about the Great Commission?
That's a good one too.
Oh, what's that?
To go out and make disciples of all nations.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think of when you hear that? Like, go make disciples. Like, what do you tie it to in your minds?
Why me?
Why me? Okay, so there's something behind that, George. What is that?
A level of believing that I'm not equipped enough, even though everything says that I am.
Yeah. I for a long time, and if I'm hearing correctly, I think this is what you're hinting at. On one extreme, attributed to the people down in city street corners holding up signs telling you to repent, are you going to go to hell? Or walking up to a stranger and be like, hey, do you know Jesus? And then just like running them through the gospel, right? So, yeah, I think it can be that. That's one way of going about it. But what about some of the things we were talking about earlier when we were looking at gifts and stuff? What if it's just asking someone how they're doing and really meaning it, and that leading to a conversation where they open up to something, and then you saying like, hey, that sounds really hard. Would you mind if I prayed for you? Billy, I think you have a lot of good stories where you've done stuff like that.
Yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to do that a bunch at work, which has been kind of cool. I think it's even taking that person that you already have a relationship with, whether it's a coworker, a friend, but maybe you never sat down and gone and had lunch and did just a simple, hey, tell me your story. Like, we've talked about whatever the things we have in common, but like, tell me your story. Like, what does that look like? And potentially, that might be reciprocated back to you. And now you get to tell your story.
Yeah. I love that because it's not like this contrived debate or speech you're going to, deliver that's going to just like wow them and convince them. Mm-hmm. It's very relational. Mm-hmm. Which I think that's a cool picture of it because if you look at the stories in the Bible, like that's how Jesus was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was all based on relationship.
And that's what I've tried to get to, like, because I've had the similar feeling, Georgia. I'm like, all right, what are the points that I'm going to hit? How am I going to tell the gospel? Like, you get in that sort of thing. And at least for me, I've really started to change that, where I'm not necessarily trying to sell them something, I guess is the way to put it, which sounds really weird. But like, even I was in Seattle at the beginning of July, and I was taking my Uber ride out there from the airport to my hotel. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. I'm typically the person that gets in the Uber, sits down, and just kind of looks at my phone for the 30 to 45 minutes.
That's me. Yep.
Don't say a word. Thanks for the ride. Here's your tip. See you later. And I've really been trying to challenge myself to talk in those rides as much as I don't want to. Rather, I was on a 4-hour flight, and I'm like, all right, I just want to like sit, listen to a podcast, and veg out in the backseat until I get there. But I decided not to, despite everything in my body going, don't do it. You don't want to. And it was actually a younger guy that was driving me, and I just started asking him a bunch of questions, like, how long have you been in Seattle? How long have you been driving? Do you have any kids? All these kinds of things. And I was just trying to get to know. And he then started asking me questions back. Like, interesting. He wants to talk too. Sweet. I actually think most of the drivers do want to talk, by the way. So
yeah.
I started, he was like, well, what do you do? And I was like, well, I work at Microsoft, but I'm also doing this thing on the side with a podcast and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't ask a follow-up question but he was thinking about it, because like 3 questions later, he goes, hey, you said something about a ministry. What is that? Mm-hmm. And then we started talking about this. I found out he's Muslim. And I was like, interesting. Like, have you ever looked into Christianity? Like, what do you think about Jesus? Oh yeah, we think this. I said, okay, what's the biggest question that you have about Christianity? He's like, I just don't get the Trinity. I'm like,
Interesting.
I said, that's fair. It's kind of a confusing thing.
Yeah.
But in that whole message, I got to talk about the gospel. And then at the end, I got out and I was like, hey, man, like, I appreciate the conversation. How come I've been praying for you? And he's like, and I actually really appreciated this. It wasn't necessarily about him. He goes, I see so much violence in our world today. Mm-hmm. He goes, can I just pray for peace for all the people that are in our city? And I said, you got it, dude. So
Gold star, Billy.
it was a fun conversation. I still am apprehensive about doing it every time I get in an Uber, but you never know what you're going to learn about somebody, which is really, really cool.
No, I think that's a perfect like example of that.
I wonder if there's like listeners out there where maybe they felt something like that. Like, I should ask this question, or I should reach out to this person and text them. I feel the same way when I go out to eat about talking to the waiters. And I've been trying really hard that when I get that feeling to acknowledge it, and because maybe it's the Spirit, and just to follow through with it. And so, listeners, if you're out there, if you ever got that gut feeling, like, I feel like I should be saying something or asking something or following up in some way, shape, or form, do it and just see what God does with that.
I like that. And that's very cool. Just being sensitive to that and obedient when you feel that calling. So just relationships and engaging in conversation and being intentional and showing you care and listening, just small things like that open that window. I think another powerful thing that we have, and you gain a lot of perspective, sorry about that, by going through all these steps is our story, our own stories. Those can be really powerful when we share them. You might choose who you share your story with. You may feel called to share it with a large group of people. Whatever it is, those can be really powerful because lots of times we're all carrying around stuff that we're not proud of, that we're even ashamed of, or we feel we're alone in what we've gone through. And when you hear someone else's story, it could be one of those moments where it's like, that's my story. Or it may not even be that, but just knowing that there's other people out there going through stuff. Like, there's a ton of power in that. And so all of that, I think, are examples of how God calls us to take the healing he's given us in our lives to go out and doing something with it. And there's a section of scripture in Psalm 71 that I want to read. I really like this because I think it sums up kind of like the hope and what we stand to gain, from going through this intense process of really digging in and looking to become, like, turning our lives over to God and living out our lives as disciples to Jesus. So it's Psalm 71, 14 through 18. It says, "But I will hope continually and will praise you yet more and more. My mouth will tell of your righteous acts, of your deeds of salvation all the day, for their numbers are past my knowledge. With the mighty deeds of the Lord God I will come. I will remind them of your righteousness, yours alone. O God, from my youth you have taught me, and I still proclaim your wondrous deeds. So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to another generation, your powers to all those to come." And I just love that passage because it's like you get this sense that the psalmist who wrote that is like grateful for God's goodness and what he's done in that person's life. And he just wants to go out and share that. And, that's been my own personal experience with regeneration, with the 12-step program, is I walked in with so much pain and shame and guilt and fear. And I'm still not perfect, but I have so much freedom from that I'm able to go out and love on people better and talk to them and share them and help people to walk through the pain in their own life. And to me, that's been a huge blessing. And I pray that it's also a blessing to the people that God brings in my path in life. So that's it. That's the 12 steps. We've gone a little bit long on this one, so we're going to try to wrap it up quickly. But just an encouragement to everyone else out there. Check it out. If you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area, Regeneration is at several churches in the area. Another big one that exists out there is Celebrate Recovery. I recommend those if you're saying like, hey, I don't necessarily have this like big problem that I'm needing to deal with, but yeah, I'm not finding that satisfaction in life. I feel like there's something missing, or, man, yeah, the way I talk to my spouse or my kids isn't great, or I'm not honest. I lie a lot. I spend money where I shouldn't be. I overeat. I do, any of those type of things. Check it out. God can change you through that. And if you are facing something bigger, if it is alcohol or one of those things, Celebrate Recovery and Regeneration are certainly can help you with that too. Or go check out one of the kind of content-specific groups like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Sex Anonymous, whatever it may be. But I did want to wrap up with one quick question for the guys here. How would you sum up what recovery is in a few words?
New creation.
New creation. How about you, George?
How about redeemed?
Redeemed. And I'll add on to their hope. So thank you for joining us for this series. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with something new for you. Thanks for joining us today. Later, everyone. Bye.